Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Follow it all at Tarpley.net, Tarpley.net, and these days, very hot action on Twitter feed, Webster G. Tarpley. I suppose that's at Webster G. Tarpley. Lots of stuff. There's also at Webster Tarpley, but Webster G. Tarpley probably has a bit more of it, and it certainly has it sooner. So again, the big political event is none of this parliamentary cretinism, none of this clown show, the Republican clown car, the death cult of the Republican Party and all their reactionary ogres that they parade, and you're supposed to pick one of them. I'm sorry, no. The action is in the streets. The action is with blue-collar working people, unions, minorities, and others. That's where the action is. And that's the 1 million signatures in Wisconsin. That is a landmark. That is the biggest event of this year and of the end of last year. The mass strike is once again abroad in the land. It started January, February of last year in Wisconsin, spread then to Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, other such places, generally with these fascist Republican governors. But again, from our point of view, we've got to also keep in mind the terrible destruction wrought by somebody like Jerry Brown, who says, I'm going to go and cut education, but I will not touch a penny of Wall Street turnover. I will not impose the sales tax on them. A lot of people in California say, we're paying 11% sales tax. Wall Street should pay exactly the same on all their accounts, because it used to be this. It was the cover story was these are capital markets. Well, they're not. These are speculative casinos. This is like a gambling tax. So Wisconsin is one magnificent example. We're watching the struggle there in Indiana. Mitch Daniels, the fascist Republican governor there, is attempting to transform Indiana into a so-called right-to-work state. And remember, right-to-work means a scab, union-busting state. Remember, when Mussolini seized power, what's the first thing that Mussolini and Hitler did? The absolute first thing, destroy all unions. You want to have totalitarianism, you have got to destroy the unions, because these are the only mass organizations that have any hope of fighting totalitarian dictatorship. And this is not a theory. This is what you see. Walker is a totalitarian. Walker wants to have the top-down dictatorship of the Koch brothers over the plantation, the feudal fiefdom, which is called Wisconsin. The unions are the only force that can fight that. And isn't it interesting? Isn't it fascinating that Ron Paul and Rand Paul, their position on this issue is, yes, the unions should all be destroyed. And that's supposed to be civil libertarian. That's supposed to be the defense of political rights and so forth here in the United States. I tell you, the modern trade union is the key to an entire context of institutions and civil society. And if you destroy all the unions, you have essentially brought the society to a level where it cannot resist totalitarianism. And again, not a theory. Go to Wisconsin, go to Michigan, you will see unions fighting the totalitarianism that counts, economic totalitarianism. Now, naturally, we're concerned about the SOPA, the SOPA bill. We don't like Obama's unlimited detention in Guantanamo Bay, but you've got to start somewhere. You can't go flying after everything that the enemy throws at you. You can't go chasing every one of the enemy's tactics. You, especially when you have limited forces, you've got to pick the one point where resistance is going to get some mass support and mass traction, and it is the defense of the standards of living of working people in an economic breakdown, crisis, and depression on the basis of unions and these economic demands. And lo and behold, Ron Paul, Rand Paul are on the other side. Oh, gosh. You could say the entire national right-to-work law that they're backing is a counter-deployment to the mass strike upsurge that we've seen. So now you've got to make a choice. If it's class against class, if it's the 99% against the 1%, I don't care about the ideological, at this point in the broadcast, I don't care about the ideological differences inside the 1%. You've got to be with the 99% against the 1%. In other words, with the masses against the oligarchs, the finance oligarchs and all of their ideologues, every different kind. And I don't care whether they're Austrian or Chicago or monetarist or Keynesian, for that matter, or Malthusian. Those are bad, too. Malthusians active this week. Now, the other one, in addition to Wisconsin, in Indiana, they're fighting the attempt by Mitch Daniels to make that a right-to-work state. Notice that Wisconsin is an attack on public sector unions. The Indiana one is an attack on all unions, all of them. All of them will be wiped out. And then we have Michigan. Now, this is fascinating. Here we are in Michigan, maybe the state the most hard hit by the Bush economic depression, the world derivatives panic, and the banking panic of 2007, 2008. So here we have Governor Snyder of Michigan, and he has something called the Emergency Manager Law. The Emergency Manager Law. And what this is basically he gets to set up mini dictators, mini despots. And the thing that people are waiting for is for him to attack the city of Detroit. Snyder can say, aha, Detroit, you are bankrupt. S&P has downgraded you. Fitch and Moody's have downgraded you. You are now a ward of the state government. I'm sending in a commissar. I'm sending in a little despot, a little tyrant who's going to be my satrap, my proconsul in Detroit, and your mayor is out and your city council is out, and we're seizing control of you, and I'm going to run you in the interests of my coterie of rich friends, right? My Wall Street friends. I'm going to take money from the Koch brothers. I'm going to look to ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange, which is the thing that coordinates the united front of these fascist governors. So he wants to do this. So the move is afoot. Basically, two things: recall Snyder if you can, and it's possible now. The automobile production has now revived enough, up to I think 9 million units last year. So General Motors has now reestablished itself as the largest auto manufacturer. Whether that has meant any hiring that might effectively tell the working class that it's possible to wage a struggle, that it's not just hopeless, that's one thing. And the other thing, of course, is to overturn this emergency manager law that gives the fascist Walker these powers to go into these places like Detroit and Flint. Now, you can follow this. There's a website called Michigan Forward, and I'm not vouching for them. I'm just saying you want to start finding things out, right? You got to get the information somewhere. Frankly, this character, Ed Schultz, for whatever reason, in order to be radical, and he goes up against Olbermann, right? Olbermann would be the petty bourgeois ultra-left, and Schultz is trying to present himself as the blue-collar left. All right, fine, evil doing good. Without this, the world would have been gone long ago. So Ed Schultz is going to tell you about these things perhaps more than any of these other programs, but you get the idea. So that's Michigan. So Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio last year, we had this. We had something similar in Maine. This is the area where you've got to get active. This is the positive thing that can shift the political situation. Back in a minute.